As business owners, entrepreneurs, family men, it's difficult for us to find the time to put together projects like these. Even though it's something we really want to do, unfortunately, taking care of the things we have to take care of comes first. However, because of viewer support for people like you, we're able to continue doing this. Please consider joining our Patreon and supporting the Burn and Return podcast. You're listening to Burn and Return, a weekly 1-hour podcast covering news from the agricultural and turfgrass industries.
Listen, I was listening to that Patreon entrance right there, and it was talking about how we're family men and stuff, and all I could think about was our topic of conversation before we started the show.
Which you only get if you're a Patreon member.
That's right. And
what were you going to say?
It didn't line up real well. Like, to just go from what we were watching and talking about to like, we're family men and we appreciate your support. I was like, man, that was...
Well, no,
I guess it could link. I mean, it was about,
there was a very professional person that was, making sure that we would all be of the same family. That was part of their job, right? To kind of keep everything.
Jay Pink said horses make families too. They do.
Yes, they sure do.
They do.
The people that people that don't know what we were just talking about leading into this are going to be like, these guys are fucking insane. And the answer is yes, we might be. But no, hey, listen. We keep it light. We try to explore all the intricacies and the vulgarities of life and try to make sense of them, right, guys? Like, there's certain things in life that people just pass by and don't ever try to take the time to appreciate or understand or look at and shake their head and be like, my God, why are you the way that you are? And we're here to do all of those things. All of those things.
There is no doubt about it. I did a lot of growing up in the pre-show today. And I don't know if I was prepared for the amount of aging that I just took on.
I was There should be a, if nothing else, no audio, at least the video of our faces reacting to what was shared with us. That would be a good content piece to ship out to everybody. Because that was it was interesting. Something I hadn't seen.
I had my typical segue there of speaking of doing a lot of growing up in a short amount of time. Gentlemen, let's check out this week's headlines.
Nothing to fear here. This is just the news.
This is perfect fodder for my 2 a.m. Twitter rants because it starts like this. Too much manure and fertilizer is being spread in some areas at the expense of water quality. Who would have thunk it? Who would have thunk it? I mean, listen, I've been going about this for a long time, and the only thing I hear is that we need more organic matter. Why can't we just use manure, more organic matter, more compost? You can't go wrong with it. Rebuild the soils, improve your soils, work on your soils, fix your soils, modify your soils, mend your soils, soil, organic, fix it, synthetic, chemical, conventional, bad. Well, it turns out, believe it or not, too much of damn near anything is also a bad thing. A new report from environmental groups says too much manure and fertilizer is being spread on fertilizer to grow crops in some Wisconsin counties, polluting nearby waters. Midwest Environmental Advocates and Environmental Working Group, the EWG, which, by the way, is one of the most in-fucking-sane groups in all of America, The
What?
EWG, oh my Lord have mercy. So do y'all remember
Educate me.
the story of they put out the piece that said there is glyphosate in your children's cereal. Do you remember
Right.
this?
I remember
Wow.
that quite well. I remember that
So-
extremely well.
It was all over the internet, and what they determined was they took the EPA recommendations as far as what was an acceptable level of glyphosate in a harvested crop, right? And then they drew down their own level of what that was. So basically, they adjusted it from parts per million down to a fraction of a part per billion. So it was 1,000 times more stringent than what the EPA put forth. And they said that is the only qualification for what would be considered safe, would be 1,000 times less than what the EPA says is safe. And published it as if it was some groundbreaking investigative journalism that they conducted, when in reality it wasn't. And then you know what they did after that? They went to all these organic producers and they were like, if you want to be one of our featured people, you could pay us $15,000 a month and we'll put you at the top of our website. Oh yeah.
What?
Oh yeah. The EWG is just the pinnacle of insanity. I mean, it is like you take everything that is a joke about Clown World today and roll it all into one, run it through a granulator system, and out comes EWG on the other side.
On
So
a mirror, ready to
EWG,
snort.
yes, chunks of it just all in your sinuses, walking into your brain and stomping mud holes in it. The EWG and the Midwest Environmental Advocates have analyzed manure and fertilizer application rates in 9 counties last year to understand how nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus are being spread on fields. The nutrients are important for growing crops, but excessive amounts can harm water quality when nutrients seep into groundwater or wash into nearby waterways. The group examined counties with known groundwater issues or pollution stemming from nitrates and bacteria that include Kewaunee County, as well as counties in the Central Sands regions in southwestern Wisconsin. The report found nitrogen from manure and fertilizer exceeded rates recommended by the University of Washington scientists in 8 of the 9 counties. In 4 counties, nitrogen from 2 sources went more than 50% beyond proposed rates, including Kewaunee County, where it was applied at nearly double recommended levels. Residents there have long struggled with nitrate contamination of private wells. The aggregation of nutrients is likely leading to both groundwater contamination and surface water contamination. And then they list out percent in recommendation met by manure applied, percent in recommended met by fertilizer sold, and blah, 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 blah. Total in overload. So I don't understand this right now as far as what this chart says. I've got to do a little bit more mining into this. Phosphorus in manure and fertilizer also surpassed the suggested rate in Kewaunee, Adams, and Portage counties. According to the report, more than 1,500 miles of streams and rivers along 33 lakes are listed by the state as impaired across 9 counties. The groups contend that's due in large part to pollution from manure and fertilizer. To arrive at their findings, the report authors used satellite images to map nearly 90,000 farm fields to determine where and how many nutrients were likely to be spread from manure produced by 1,901 livestock farms that were identified. The amount of nutrients from manure in those counties were combined with an estimated amount of nitrogen and phosphorus and fertilizer sold. Sales were based on state figures that were divided up using county-level data from National Agricultural Statistics. Nearly 20,000 tons of nitrogen, 17,000 tons of phosphorus are produced by the farms across 9 counties each year, according to the report. Meanwhile, fertilizer sales have grown statewide from 161,000 tons to 345,000 tons. So it goes on and on and on. And I'll finish this out here. Around 90% of nitrogen in groundwater can be traced back to agriculture. Dairy and environmental groups have urged lawmakers to provide funding to support farms in protecting drinking water. They've lobbied for increased funding for county conservation staff and cost share assistance for conservation practices that have reduced runoff. They're also backing bills that would help people address nitrate-contaminated wells and help aid farmers optimizing the use of nitrogen fertilizer on their land. Okay, all of that to say is they're using data for fertilizer sold and approximated manure produced from livestock and assuming all that manure produced is going on the fields in combination with the fertilizer that's sold on a county basis. So It wasn't necessarily that they were out there testing all the individual waterways and applying some sort of traceability standard to figure out where it was going. They were trying to back into this through sales, right? So not exactly the most reliable way to prove your hypothesis, in my opinion. And it's not to say that there isn't misapplication. Here's the other thing, too, that is not talked about that I think is as equally important, if not greater importance, is the amount of tillage, runoff, and erosion, or the amount of tillage and erosion that's leading to runoff, and thus waterway contamination of these products. Because as we all know, the fastest way to deposit a shitload of phosphorus in a waterway is not necessarily just by over application, because once phosphorus is in soil, it's relatively stable. Where you get into trouble is if you face a significant amount of erosion. Erosion is a much greater contributor to contaminated waterways than fertilizer application is, according to the statistics that I have analyzed. So, gentlemen, after taking a look at this, I want to do a deep dive on this in particular. We don't have to get into it today, but I'm curious. Y'all got any hot takes on this or what?
Okay, so it's not an uncommon situation here in the Midwest, right? And Ohio went through this, 10 years ago now, something like that, where there's a particular river basin, the Maumee River, which is in northwest Ohio, and primarily agricultural country, like leading up to it, and then the mouth of the Maumee dumps into the lake, into Lake Erie at Toledo. So there was a number of instances of finger pointing back and forth as the river became more and more polluted, and the waterways coming down through there became more and more compromised. And so it was several things, right? So this all kind of came to a head, and I know I've talked about it here on this show before, where again, 10 or so years ago in the middle of summer, the city of Toledo, right, probably the 5th or 6th largest city in Ohio, literally had to shut down drinking water, right, municipal drinking water, because they couldn't pull from the lake because there was so much algae and cyanobacteria in the lake at their intakes that they couldn't do it. It wasn't safe. Okay, so it's an ongoing issue here, and the manure is definitely a part of it, right? The way that folks fertilize and things like that, the 4 Rs, right, have become a big deal in what farmers here in particular are doing, right? And they caught a bad rap. I mean, they definitely caught a bad rap. It's also changed, practices with reduced tillage, like you were saying, right? And the other piece that nobody has been willing to admit, although they've been changing it because of federal regulations, right, is Ray, combined storm sewers. And I'm not saying that that's the only thing, and that's not to say that it's surpassing what could or has been done right by fertilizers. But the whole point is that there's a lot of bad stuff that ends up in the waterways, and particularly when it comes to phosphorus, right? There are a number of ways that takes place, and it's not just fertilizer. However, we got to do a better job, right? And we all need to do a better job. So what do you think?
Well, what I think is overall, everybody needs to be cognizant of what's called non-point source pollution. And that includes runoff, that includes erosion, and oddly enough, big sources of soil erosion include, get this one, mismanaged farm fields and also mismanaged turfgrass areas. And by the way, there is one more thing that I like to look at regarding phosphorus and nitrogen pollution of waterways. And you know what that is, Ryan?
What's that?
Tree leaves.
Good point.
Okay? You know, the leaf
Good
litter
point.
There's actually
created by,
go ahead. I got something to say to that too. Go ahead.
Created by, the street trees. Here's my nightmare scenario. When that tree drops its leaves, and then the leaf litter washes down into the waterways. And when I see that, I'm thinking immediately of all the nitrates and phosphates that are present in that leaf litter that then makes its way into bodies of water. And when I see that happening, I am thinking, what genius prescribed that there be trees planted where the leaves will fall and then wash into the waterways?
Landscape architect. Sorry, I gotta mute myself.
Well, but and it's like an inevitable thing. And there's actually a lot of there was a round of funding that was put out, I want to say by USDA, I think, a couple of years ago now. I'm not sure what happened with it, but they were actively seeking researchers that wanted to take on water quality projects like that, like to understand what is the impact between bagging your leaves, right, versus mulching your leaves versus just whatever happens to your leaves in a urban or suburban environment, right? Particularly areas that have storm sewers that drain to waterways. I mean, it's one thing, if you've got you have a 1 or 2 acre lot that's surrounded by nothing but farm fields. That's a little bit different story in terms of the way the water moves off your property and the filters that it goes through before it gets there versus where I'm at, and there's 6 storm sewers within 300 feet of my house, and any which one of them would go down to the river that's close by, right? That's pretty close. That's going to be a problem. And so I think the whole thing is you got to be responsible with what you do. You have to be practical and thoughtful. And here is the biggest takeaway from this message, gentlemen, is that we are the low-hanging fruit. We are the easy target. And I'll say that with farmers too, farmers and turf. And we've seen this in Ohio, that the agriculture and horticulture industries have taken the brunt of this, while in the background other stuff is taking place to mitigate some of the issues that were already known. But outwardly, it's expressed that, hey, we're the problem and we're dealing with those troublemakers. And that's I think where it's going to head. I think that's how it's going to go.
Yeah, because I'm going to tell you right now, if I were God, the first thing that would go away would be trees that had the potential to drop their trash into drains that enter waterways. That would be the first thing that I'd have gone. Likewise, I'd think very hard about grass areas that are close to waterways. Like, for example, I would not want grass that had to be maintained or even mowed near a waterway. And because do you know what else? The city and county of Honolulu, for example, gets on people's asses about all the time. Did you know that it is even illegal to have grass clippings go down a waterway?
Yeah,
it is illegal
same here.
in Honolulu. But
Same here.
Okay, but okay, I'm gonna ask, who the fuck put a turf area next to a waterway? Who the fuck did that? Why?
For everybody considering cleaning out the underside of their mower deck on top of the drain because it disappears into Never Ever Land, just remember that all of that shit comes pointing back to us. Gentlemen, do you have your tinfoil ready? Because if you don't, it's time to go ahead and pull it out because we have another force majeure. Dum dum dum. This time coming out of where? Oh, Belarus. And in terms of potash production, Belarus is number 3 in the world. And basically what has happened is Belarus said, we are not going to be able to meet our contracts due to sanctions from the U.S. and Europe. This is an unprecedented situation in the potash market, CRU Group analyst Humphrey Knight said by phone. It could take many months, if not longer, for that supply to recover. Belarus exports about 10 to 12 million tons annually, according to Green Markets data. Global potash contracts have settled at the highest price since 2008, ensuring another year of pricey inputs for farmers and strong earnings for producers. U.S. sanctions on Belarus eliminated a key competitor with no readily available alternative supplier because we are on fucking top of it. The sanctions may result in shifting trade flows and some demand rationing. Nutrien interim CEO Ken Seitz said in an interview, customers who have historically produced from Belarus are trying to secure supplies elsewhere. For example, Russia is doubling fertilizer quantities offered to Brazil. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro said during an interview with Radio Jovem Pan Thursday. And it goes on and on. We're not standing around saying we're not doing anything, Seitz said. We heard that before last week. We've definitely got a plan in place. Nutrien anticipates global potash shipments will be between 68 million tons and 71 million tons in 2022. We'll see. Nutrien is now in the driver's seat for how high potash prices go this year. That does not make me feel comfortable at all, because wasn't Nutrien already in tight supply because they had sodium chloride contamination in one of their mines, and weren't they already only operating at like 40% capacity or something due to sodium chloride contamination in one of their mines or something of the sort? And now the weight of the potash world falls, well, at least in the in Western countries, now falls on Nutrien. We'll see how this shakes out. And I hate to say this, but I have this much, and I'm signaling the hand signal for zero faith in relying upon a single sole source provider of potash. And it's nothing against Nutrien. It's just from purely an economic and business standpoint, you never have just one supplier. There always has to be a contingency plan. And right now, there's no redundancy. They own basically the monopoly of Western potash, and there ain't a damn thing we can do about it except ride the lightning and figure out what the hell shakes out on the other side. And to be honest, the fact that we're even in this situation, relying upon one owner of all the mines in North America, is fucking embarrassing to begin with. So, boys, are we ever going to be able to afford potash again? Because this year ain't it. That's for sure.
Can I tell you everything that you just said, and tell you how it's worse than you actually know?
Sure.
That gave me the warm. That gave me the warm fuzzies. So the way that this force majeure shook out, right, was who is it? Lithuania, right? That is on the border of Belarus, and that's where the port is, right? So all the trains for the national company in Belarus that sends this stuff, right, across and into the ports and then sends it out through Europe and everywhere else, right? Lithuania said, nah, you're not doing it anymore. We're not going to let you do it. So they gave up a huge cash cow, and they're about to get sued in international court for basically breaching their contract, right? To both haul that and then take it to port and ship it out into the free market. So that's one thing, right? So you basically have two countries that are neighboring. One has easier port access. Belarus has none. They have to ship it north. So guess who owns the rights now to get that stuff to port?
Oh, tell me, Big Ryan. Lay it on me thick like a horse in a stable.
Hey, it's getting rowdy in here. You have to pay extra for that. So Big Vlad is now in charge of that stuff.
Yay!
Oh,
jeez, man.
Oh,
So
yeah.
He'll control getting that stuff into St. Petersburg so it can get sent out to wherever it needs to go, right? And as a result, that means that he can squeeze Europe, and that in turn means that Europe will need to go to Canada, right, and China and other places to get help, because it's not necessarily in Vlad's best interest to send everything out where the buyers may or may not need it. So yeah, it's going to get a little squirrely there for a while, for the foreseeable future.
Man, I mean, just we talk about the dominoes. We talk about the dominoes. This right here is like typing
This
in.
is big time. This is big time.
This is typing into YouTube the world's largest domino, whatever you call it, fall. What is it called where you line up the dominoes and you knock one down and it just goes and goes and goes, and they do all these cool things where it knocks over a ball, and a cue ball hits a rat cage that spins in a circle pours a beer down a funnel.
That's called 2022.
That's just the domino effect. That's just the domino effect
Domino
right there. Yeah, that's just the domino effect. And we are unfortunately living in that. And the reason why we're living in that is because we have placed too much trust in others. And
there's only so many places you can get it from. It's just that whole idea, right? That it's just letting the free market work itself out, and whatever capitalism, you can say whatever you want, positive, negative. The whole point is that these aren't like commodities, like to where, hey, if we have them, we do, great. If we don't, we don't, right? This is literally has everything to do with food security, right? Let's just start there. Who gives a shit if you're you want to put some fucking stress blend out or some shit, right? Links in the description below. But yeah, it is. It's gonna get sporty. It's gonna get real sporty.
It is, and it's one hell of a leverage tool that old Vlad has now in his favor in the midst of whatever is going on over there. One day you turn on the news and they're like, nope, we're not actually going to war. And then the next day you turn it on and they're like, yep, they're going to war on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday consecutively. It's an odd thing.
Or Matt, no need go to war. You just shut off the potash and you shut off the natural gas, and the rest of the world starves. As easy as that. You don't need to fire a shot or roll out the tanks. You just shut off the things that make the world go.
Well,
Simple,
and again, and I'm going to point the finger at the United States in this particular scenario of allowing the monopolization of commodities, and we have allowed that to happen over decades. It's not something that just happened immediately. It's happened over decades, and everybody's watched it happen, and everybody sat silent on it and was like, "Oh, it won't be that bad. It can't be that bad. We still have foreign imports. We still have this." And now it is. It's that bad.
And not only that, Matt, the reason why this was okay is because I'm always talking about the export of industries and commodities, right? I'm always talking about how we in the United States and Western Europe like to export certain industries out. Like, we don't want to do that here, but it's okay as long as it's done, say, in former Soviet Union or China or whatever. It's okay if it happens there because it's dirty. However, those dirty, disgusting, non-politically correct industries are essential to our well-being, and to export control of that to some foreign power that can then shut that off when they want to. I mean, talk about an insecure position to be in.
Yes, like the force majeure on glyphosate, now force majeure on potash. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Now the good news is that Bayer's got a new herbicide coming out, and I love this press release on it, coming by 2030. And I laugh about that, but there's a reason why. In order for an herbicide to make it to a pesticide in general, so I'm talking about all classes, anything that ends in side, in order for it to make it to market is a decade And I can't remember. I looked up the cost, and I believe if you put it through the entire round of testing, it's somewhere around $20 million.
Oh, it's more than that.
And you need decades of testing of, injecting it into a rabbit's eyeball to watch if it melts or whatnot, and all this bizarre ass testing. I mean, it's crazy, all the different kinds of testing they have to do, establish LD50s and, mammalian testing and all that. So it's a crazy thing. But the good news is that maybe by the time we're ready to retire, we'll have a new active ingredient on the market. So that's exciting. Now, something that is a little bit more recent is that there is a new product in the soybean space. And what's kind of exciting, kind of not. I was actually excited when I read it because this is Tindovo is the new product. And what's interesting here is they actually state that they are attacking weeds at 3 sites of action, right? And we all know from an herbicide resistance standpoint, 2.5 modes of action is 83 times less likely to develop resistance. And here we have a product that targets 3 sites of action. Well, looking at the label of this, we are combining, we are recycling old herbicides and calling them new. So this is a combination of metolachlor, metribuzin, and chloransalam. So, kind of an odd ALS inhibitor, metribuzin, which is in the same family as simazine, and then metolachlor. So not exactly anything new or novel there, but as far as a combination product, it at least does utilize 3 modes of action there. So
hey,
well, that's
maybe we'll get something in turf one day like that too.
Well, I was going to say there's a lot of products that you see like this repackaged.
Well, here's the thing, Matt.
Oh, go ahead.
Here's the thing, Matt, is that, okay, metolachlor, that's pennant magnum.
Yep.
Metribuzin, that's Cencor DF.
Yep.
And chloransalam, my understanding is that, in Europe, especially I believe in, I think the UK and Germany, they're using chloransalam for weed control and turfgrass already. But
yeah,
so this is nothing new, but the whole concept of utilizing optimized tank mixes is probably the way to go, because I've been doing that for years, in that I've been finding these optimal tank mixes that get things done. That's basically been the story of my career.
Yeah, and you have to play along here. I know that this is sort of one of those things too. Like, Matt, I've heard you complain about it. I've complained about it in the golf space before, but where you have somebody, a manufacturer coming in and saying, "Hey, look at this, it's new," and it's like, no, it's really not. You've just packaged a bunch of stuff together, and I think that's probably one of the things that people need to be really clued in on, among other things. And the other thing here too is with this coming in 2030, there's probably going to be about 6-7 Kentucky Derby winners that are coming in 2032, Matt.
Probably.
They may be winning, but it's not going to be at my hands. That's for sure. I'll let old gal in the Instagram video take control of that, because boy, she took control like she meant it. I am blushing, like embarrassed, even bringing that back up, DeMay, to be honest. This week, our show is brought to you by our patrons. Patrons, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to have these types of conversations and to grow up a little bit more each week. There are certain things I've learned about the world in today's pre-show that I'm not sure I actually needed to learn. And but the fact that I did, it exposed me to another aspect of life that I'll gladly die never participating in. And all of that exists because of you, and why we are so grateful for you. Don't forget, at 69 patrons, I will be reintegrated back into society as a normal human being, or at least attempt to. And we'll see how all that plays out, because I don't know. I kind of enjoy the space I live in, and
It's getting real, Matt. It's
it
getting
is
real.
getting real. It's getting real effing close, and I'm a little bit nervous. Speaking of nervous, gentlemen, let's check on the Itchy Bernie thing from Sheila real quick on this week's Burns. Yeah, that was Itchy Bernie.
That was
right.
no, that was her coming down the backstretch of the Belmont. Anyway.
Yikes.
Oh, pink on the inside. I don't. Yeah. Damn it, Ryan. I may do these articles out of order to put a little bit of a buffer between one and the other.
Okay.
Actually, yes, let me do that, because one of them is about a 13-year-old. So I'm gonna start with the second one, and we'll talk about this one first.
Okay. Sure. Really buffer that out.
There was something about the horse talk that just didn't feel right going into the one with someone who's underage. What we saw in Oklahoma has now been extended to Missouri and Kansas. And again, this is falling underneath that EPA Endangered Species Act, right? Farmers may need to find a new form of herbicide for the coming year. The EPA is preventing use of the Enlist 1 and Enlist Duo herbicides. It will affect 10 counties across Kansas, including Labette, Montgomery, Neosho, and Cherokee counties in southeast Kansas. The decision was made to help protect endangered species like the Bering beetle, which are native to the area. First thing producers are going to need to do this year whenever they plant their soybean is make sure they start out with a clean field, whether it's through tillage or a burn down herbicide. We highly recommend putting a pre-plant herbicide down or a pre-emerge herbicide down as they plant soybeans, or right before they plant soybeans, and then coming back later with another post-emergent herbicide other than Enlist. 5 counties in Missouri are also affected by the decision: Barton, Bates, Cedar, St. Clair, and Vernon counties. So, interestingly here, we're seeing bans on herbicides according to the label at the county label. This is interesting now that we're seeing it out of one state into 3 states across multiple random ass counties and states. And the reason why I think it's so interesting and worthy of conversation is it's one thing to apply these restrictions on a county label. It's another when it comes time to enforcement and also education. So that way we don't have farmers or lawn care operators in what's coming down the pike as well making applications incorrectly purely because they simply didn't know of the new restrictions related to the herbicide. I could see this happening really, really quickly and entrapping someone who just did not know, because you can't disseminate the information fast enough to the appropriate people. Because I don't think the labels are going to be printed with county level restrictions on them. So is there a new database or person you reach out to find out, in my county, can I apply this herbicide now? Does that exist? How are they going about that?
I don't think so. And for the listeners, what Enlist herbicide is Enlist herbicide is a 2,4-D choline formulation that is intended for use on 2,4-D tolerant soybean and cotton, for example. That's what Enlist herbicide is used for. Now, this is where it also becomes problematic, because essentially you are applying 2,4-D mid-season and probably next door to crops and areas that don't contain 2,4-D tolerant crops. So I've said it at the inception of this new technology, in that I had extremely mixed feelings about introducing dicamba tolerant crops and 2,4-D tolerant crops for this very reason.
It's
gonna-
tricky.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's gonna be tricky because how do you know? And I think that's the thing is, as this other endangered species stuff comes down the pike, right? In terms of, because I think we read it on here, guys. Is the the next batch of products and actives they're going to look at are kind of the ones you'd expect them to look at, right? So it's the neonics, right? The phenoxys, right? All the sort of the heavy hitters, and I think you're going to see more and more of this, and so it's going to be even more confusing, I guess, in the sense of like, hey, you can use this active here in this county, but you can't use this other one, or vice versa. And I think that is where it's gonna be challenging, very very challenging.
It is,
For
and
sure.
what I hope never happens is someone innocently gets made an example out of because of some bureaucrat that sees an opportunity to make an example out of someone and absolutely destroys their livelihood. And I hate to say, I guarantee it's going to happen, but I guarantee it's going to happen to someone at some point. Leavenworth man previously sentenced for stealing a child's lawnmower, also stole an ATV. There is a special place in hell for this piece of shit. A Leavenworth man who was convicted for stealing a child's lawnmower, whose community raised the money to donate it to him after a previous lawnmower incident resulted in the child losing his leg, has now been sentenced for stealing an ATV. He was sentenced to a year of probation after stealing the lawnmower, along with 60 days in jail and $1,270 in restitution.
What? Wait.
He was sentenced to a year of probation and 60 days in jail and a $1,270 restitution fine for stealing a lawnmower from a kid who had the money raised for him after a previous lawnmower incident chopped his fucking leg off.
God.
What kind of, oh man, you got to be kidding me. They gave this
Some
guy
people,
2
man-
months in jail and a year of probation and $1,000 fine for being peak fucking scumbag.
Gee, I mean, I think in some cases, this is the one time when I think Saudi Arabia has got it right.
God.
Where, yup, I mean, Saudi
Ray in the
Arabia's
death
got it
live.
right.
Yeah, no. You can live. You just don't need hands anymore. Hey, see,
it's like-
hey, we tied it all. Listen,
know
we
what?
tied it all together, Mr. Hands.
You know what?
All right, keep going.
For some people, I mean, they are just incapable of rehabilitation. And you know what? It's obvious to me that he's on probation, and
I gotta mute.
he does it again. He does it again. Maybe not to the same kid, but then he does it again because he stole someone's ATV. And damn it. I mean, if that's the case, you know what, Ryan? I'll make a concession. The
What's
guy
that?
doesn't lose his hand. You know what he loses?
Mhm.
He loses
know.
a leg.
Oh,
He loses a leg.
Oh man,
Okay?
leg for a
I
leg,
mean,
eye for an eye.
Yeah, I'll show up with the damn saw, okay? Just lob that thing off. I mean, you ain't stealing an ATV or a mower.
This segment brought to you by the Geo Ripper, removing men's legs nationwide that steal from children that have their legs removed. No, it's crazy. Now, after he steals the ATV, he got 10 months in the Department of Corrections, so he'll serve what, 6 months, something like that.
Yeah.
But you know, he got out. He just got sentenced for stealing the lawnmower in October of 2021, and now he's already out stealing again. And I'm like, come on.
You know what, Matt? That is what I mean by what is it going to take to get this guy to stop taking what isn't his? I mean,
If
what's it gonna take
if
to
it's some 18-year-old kid, 17-year-old kid, you make a mistake, you learn from it, things go on. This guy's 59 years old. At 59, you understand what you're doing when you steal a lawnmower.
Yeah.
When you're 16 years old, you think you're invincible. The world doesn't apply to you. There's a lot of shit going on
kid,
hormonally.
Right? Yeah, you're a dumb kid. At
Puberty's got you all fucked up. But this is a grown ass man, and and he honestly needs the Mr. Hands treatment.
There you go.
Right,
hey, listen, I'm gonna get involved in that. According to what I learned here earlier tonight, all that it takes is some strong arms and wearing a polo shirt. So, got that.
Grip it and rip it, gentlemen. Let's check out this week's returns. John Deere announces the next generation sprayer for in-season herbicide application. And I got to say, this is pretty damn cool. Hear what farmers are saying about their first experience with the next generation of See and Spray sprayer from John Deere. Using an advanced camera, sensor, and nozzle control technology, the company says it's taking targeted in-season herbicide application to another level. Less herbicide, less cost, and more sustainability. That's the ultimate in weed management, and it's here, John Deere says. And, of course, they have some videos for you to check out. I have been a gigantic – it's everybody, not just me, myself. I have been a gigantic fan and a fan girling over precision agriculture for a long time. And it started back, actually, when I was just a wheat chap new to the industry because – I wanted to go work for a precision agriculture company because I thought it was so unbelievably cool. And I can't remember the name of that company. They were a who does the big blue ag machines? What's the name of that brand?
New Holland.
It was a New Holland dealer, and they had their own deal. And I want to say it was called like the Viper system was the name of their precision ag system. And I was fascinated by it, especially, being an applicator at that point and seeing that. I just thought it was so unbelievably cool. But here, and I say a lot of this has to do with the fact that optic systems have become so advanced over the last few years. Now, all of a sudden, we can apply a See and Spray, a spot and spray type of application. And this is the next frontier of precision ag. And kudos to John Deere.
Matt, this is actually not that new, although it's been automated, because guess how, for example, cotton fields used to be sprayed for weeds back in the 1960s?
Wicking, or you out there with the backpack sprayer or spot and spraying?
Neither. What they do is they set up a boom over the rows of cotton with guys standing on top of that boom with a handgun, and clumps of Johnson grass would get, for example, a dose of MSMA from the handgun. They wouldn't broadcast spray it, but they would directly spray each clump of grass. And that was done in another time when, I guess, weed control wasn't as sophisticated. You'd have a crew of guys standing on top of a boom. The tractor would be driving over the field, and they would just be playing target practice with the weeds.
Well, with the labor situation in the United States, there's no doubt about it. Robots are the thing that's coming in, and I can tell you from an employer standpoint, the appeal of robots are that they don't call in sick. They don't take days off, and they don't stick their hands in pieces of equipment for pain medication and all the other crazy things that you encounter. I'm not kidding. I had someone say that he could get $10,000 for a finger, and these things keep you awake at night. You know what I mean? Especially when you're a fledgling startup, and someone says that, and you're like, oh my gosh, I employ this person, and he's so desperate for money. And what's bad is that when they're making more money than you are, when they're making more money than you are and they're still willing to cut their finger off for 10 grand is amazing. I don't know. But kudos to them for pioneering this kind of technology because it is pretty fascinating. Gentlemen, let's check out.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, we'll check out the mailbag. We got a pretty interesting one.
You've got mail.
We do have mail. It's not from Mr. Hands. I promise you that. Hey, all, I always appreciate the help in the Discord and tune in when I can. I think my recent soil test is fairly straightforward, but would appreciate some input. If there are specific Subvert products you would recommend or micros, I would appreciate it. You don't need to worry about that. Lawn is all rotary mode, Bermuda front, Tiff-Tough sod, 8,000 square feet, and Turf Type Tall Fescue backyard, Lebanon Turf 4-seed blend, live in North Carolina. I spray and spread, have access to southern states for reasonably priced granular options, 111 and other combos available, and some fungicides like Armada. I spray Subvert products when necessary. Rake keeps me in line to not overdo stuff, peptides in particular. I felt like I had great results with Prefix last year. Lawn matured faster from a fall overseed, pre-emergent. Thanks for the help. I'm sure I forgot something. And he sent us his, I hate talking about Subvert products. I feel like it's too shilling. And here he brings up his soil test. So we'll take a look at this and make some recommendations. And I'm not going to recommend a single Subvert product. It's a matter of Kaji. Sorry. Let me see here. All right. We got some decent organic matter in the back. We get a little.
How about that? How about that phosphorus? How about that phosphorus?
K. Where are we at? Where is phosphorus on this thing?
Top
There's
row. Bailey 3 phosphorus.
ENR. Oh. I see.
Ooh.
They got it on.
Whoa.
Hey.
Wow.
Gentlemen, we have not just gone below. Is that superseded? Hyperseeded? What is that? What is the appropriate word to say that? I can't remember. Exceeded would be, you go over. I can't remember what it is when you go under. Not just MLSN, but also what's his name? Who was at University of Kentucky and University of Florida?
Shaddix.
Shaddix is going below. Shaddix established turf 5 parts per million level here. These are in line with some of the lowest P levels I've ever seen for a Malic 3.
Yeah. Well, and it's going to be pretty accurate too on pH of 5.7 soil. So this is real deal.
Yeah, where the hell is the pH? Okay, here's pH. Yeah, look at the calcium levels. Wow, we're at 5. MLSN levels of calcium. I've never seen that before either.
As well,
that's pretty fascinating.
Where's the
we normally don't get to hear
sandy
from people
soil
that have this kind of pH, but if it's sandy, in fact, sandy soil, this is a blessing in a way, because in order to amend a mostly sand soil, you don't need to hammer it as much as you would with a clay.
I thought you had to pre-feed the soil with all sorts of stuff to wake up.
Oh, you have to wake up the microbial activity. Yes, you got to. That's right. I heard that. You have to wake up the microbial activity. I mean, I have heard that, but then putting all the bullshit aside, all that's needed here is calcium, high calcium lime, calcitic lime.
Yep.
I would even start to look at a 1-1-1 type of a fertilizer program, at least during the first year, and then reevaluate my program after going through 1-1-1 for the year, and then see where you're at in 2023. Because just bump up our phosphorus a little bit and continue to supply the potassium, because I foresee the point where you can back away from the phosphorus and then simply supply replacement amounts of nitrogen and potassium to the turf, and continue to monitor monitor your pH after an initial bolus of 50 pounds of high calcium lime per 1,000 square foot this year.
You need to get this gentleman a good spray rig and turn him loose with some cal nitrate. That's where I'd be, just for
Ooh.
fun.
Yeah. Well, cal nitrate is a real light a fire under the grass's ass kind of a treatment.
I'm just
I
saying a
know.
little
I mean,
bit. Tenth of a pound.
No,
Tenth of a pound every now and
no,
again.
I've used calcium nitrate, and that's how I treat turf grass growing on acidic soil. It's like your nitrogen is coming from cal nitrate, and your potassium is coming from potassium nitrate. It's like send it.
Send it. This, I'll tell you what this does, though, gentlemen. This gets me excited to get into soil test season. We're about to go on a pretty good run here with our guest coming up on Thirsty Thursday. I'm excited for this. Start ripping through some of them.
We are going to have to do a couple of those shows where we just hammer through soil tests a couple of times. Because that is a lot of fun. Jake, I hope we answered all your questions there. This year applying to 111 makes absolutely perfect sense and liming the hell out of it. And then if you want to trick it up, like if you need, a little bit of that hot wallop kind of sort of thing there, an application of calcium nitrate would do you well. And you can, if you want an additional color bump in between fertilizer applications, and you want to go spray some foliar micronutrients, you're not going to hurt anything by doing that. But just understand that you are, it's a temporary color response, not necessarily anything that you're providing some huge agronomic value by doing. So how about them apples? Boys, on Thursday, are y'all aware of what's coming up?
Please inform me, Matt.
We have a brand new applicator, recently passed his test, has been studying for a couple years now, planning, strategizing, business strategizing, all kinds of fun stuff to get ready for the big day to launch into a parallel career in the green industry. We have To the Roots Lawn Care on Thirsty Thursday.
I'm excited. That should be fun.
Oh,
I am too.
This is
going to be a good one.
That's going to be super fun. That's going to be super fun because, if there's something that I like dealing with, it's brand new applicators that are like literally new to the business, to where we just how shall I say? We just make a difference.
Well, don't worry. He came in town and already gave him the pep talk of whatever you do, don't get into this industry, and he still decided to stick with it. I'm just kidding. I didn't have that conversation. We had a very good one, so I think it's going to be very productive from what we get to bring to the table here, gentlemen. It's been real. We will catch y'all on Thursday. Now we're going to the show after the show to hang out with our patrons and pick this week's title. See.